Hey guys, what's up? It's Marie with Swipe in the City. We are back again over Zoom. For those of you who have noticed the difference in our lovely voices here, yes, we are recording through Zoom, trying to be really cautious about all this COVID crap. Um, Michelle, how are you doing today? I feel like you've had quite the day for a Friday.
Yeah, today's been a little bit of a roller coaster. A little bit of some ADD for work, but yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm glad it's Friday. I had a few follow-ups to get out today. They went out at like 5:30 p.m., which is fine.
Classic.
Just they went out. That's all that matters. Um, yeah, I have some really exciting news for you. But first, how are you doing? How was your day today?
Okay, no. You're not going to do that to me for a second time today. This bitch fucking told me at like 8 a.m. She's like, I have some great news, but I'm not going to tell you yet. And I was like, just fucking tell me.
No,
I know we're recording tonight and I know you want to see my reaction authentically, but all right, go. My day doesn't matter. Just tell me.
So I have had two conversations this week. And for the people who don't know, we did a socially distanced speed dating event like a month and a half ago when things were a little more tame here in Austin. So we haven't heard much from people in terms of like if they're connecting, if they're reaching out, what's going on. And so a couple of our guy friends participated, and I will keep them anonymous. But I ran into one a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I forgot to tell you, like, I have a date set up with one of the girls from the event." I was like, "That is fucking awesome." Ran into him at the neighborhood HEB because he lives in our building, as do
Of
most of us.
course.
And asked him, I was like, "Hey, whatever happened? Did you go on that date?" And he's been consistently seeing the person.
Wow.
So we made a match. And
For
then
now, knock on wood.
yeah. So he said, nothing too serious, nothing too crazy, but they had a really good connection and being able to meet in kind of that. I mean, it's not really an organic way since you're planning to go to the event, and then I went to support one of our other friends at an event he had last night. And he's like, "Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I've hung out with one of the girls from the event like a few times. We've kind of been hanging out and seeing each other." And I was like, "What?" So
we did it.
We have two success stories out of like 10 potential. Well, I mean, obviously it's like 100 potential, or it's like whatever.
And
but yeah,
that's I have more success stories than I have on Bumble. So fuck yeah.
So
also fuck you for holding out on me.
Well, I was gonna text you when I ran into our friend at the store, and then I was like, "Oh, I'll just save this." So I'm really excited. I think it's really cool that we were able to help people make some real connections in the crazy world that we live in. So I was pumped on that.
Yeah, that was awesome. I'm excited for when things kind of settle down and maybe we get vaccinated or something so that we can do some more speed dating events like that. Awesome. Well, that's fucking great news. That's like almost the best news I've had all day.
What news did you have that was better than that?
Not the news that my juicer arrived. That was third, I guess, in my best news today. The first I had like 8-ish, right when I got back after you gave me your little teaser. I came back upstairs and had a text from one of my agents for work. And she was like, "Hey, I want to go back through everything. Can you give me what we call a coaching call?" And that's like basically where my position is headed. And so I was kind of among the first on my team to be able to do this. Like got some like additional coaching from my manager, and it was so much fun. Like it reminded me of it was the same kind of rush that I used to have, or like that you've had now with like closing deals.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of the equivalent to what this type of a call is. She had a client ready to use our tool. And it was just, oh, it was so much fun. And she was like so stoked and like ready to talk to her client by the end of it. So it was a great start to my day. And then after that, I was pretty much like, all right, so that was a great call. It's Friday. I'm done, right?
I had the most severe case of the Fridays all day. I had to battle my brain to get things done. That's why I was sending emails out at 5:30, but we made it.
We made it. We're here.
Speaking of that, we have a special beer today. It's not crazy special, but
did you brew it yourself?
Yeah. In all my spare time, I started home brewing in my apartment as well. No, I just want to do a quick shout out. We are drinking Kung Fu Robot. It is an IPA by Fourth Tap Brewing. So they're up in, I guess it's not technically North Austin, but it's north of us. So it feels like it. But they have a really cool little tap room. They've got I think it's South by Southeast food cart there. So it's like, I think Asian American fusion.
Okay. I was going to say, is that Indian?
No, I think I'm not sure exactly what it is. Well, we'll figure it out. But one of the reasons I wanted to check them out is because they've been pushing this new beer that they released called the Running Man, which we also have as our backup beer. And this is just like a light version of their hazy IPA. So if you're in Austin and you're trying to drink less or cut back on calories a little bit, I tasted this actually up at the tap room and it's pretty good. It's definitely lighter, less hoppy, but it's only 100 calories for an IPA, which is not very many. So I just was excited to try it and promote them today.
And of course, new year, new us. We're totally watching our diet and how much we're drinking.
I mean,
sort of.
I am so proud of myself this week. I took someone through the Whataburger parking lot the drive-through because they wanted it, and I didn't get a single thing. So if that
Good for you.
If that isn't progress, then nothing is.
Well, and speaking of progress, so I do want to say, like, I want to throw this out there. My little brother got me this journal, Let That Shit Go. And this is awesome. It's by the same people that make the coloring books that are a bunch of like profanity, like all over, and you just color it in. I love coloring, so he got me some of those too. But one of the things, I was flipping through this, and there's a page in here that caught my eye because it's about creeping on social media, a crap ton of creeping. And it kind of goes, in my opinion, like it kind of goes with some of the New Year, New Me theme. But basically, it just kind of talks about how sometimes when you creep on people, you kind of end up feeling like a shit ton worse than you did when you started. And so it asks you to list out the people that you will not creep on. And so I, of course, listed some of my toxic exes, as most of us do. But I'm kind of wondering here, especially we did a poll for this episode, to creep or not to creep. And it seems like a lot of people are creeping.
Oh, yeah.
I'm wondering if this is something that people would even be willing, like, to say, like, no, I'm not going to creep on my date. Like, I'm just going to go and be surprised. Kind of like when there was that speed dating event and like they didn't know who they were going to meet. They ended up with these surprise, like, potential connections.
You said you're wondering if people would be willing to not do that?
Yeah. I mean, so we asked, of course, if you're going to check out your date's social media or creep on them before the date, right? And I mean, 83% of people said yes, which I was just shocked it wasn't more.
Really? Do you creep?
Not before a first date. No. Do you?
No. That's interesting to me that it's not shocking that it's 81%. That's definitely the most, like, to one side we've had in any of our polls.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I don't really have the time or energy, I feel like, to find somebody and check out their Instagram. And it's like, it kind of ties into what the book said, right? if you go on and you see something and you don't have the backstory, like you're going to go in with all of these, not judgments, but like assumptions about the person.
No judgments.
And judgments, as opposed to just like going in and meeting the person and getting their vibe and maybe hearing their story. Like maybe they have, pictures with girls and it's their sisters or something, but it doesn't say that in the caption.
Well, and for me too, like the reason I wait, like I kind of wait a little bit, and maybe this is no more or less healthy, but like I wait until I'm a little bit more emotionally invested before I really like get deep into my creeping. Because to me, it's like, okay, especially with dating apps, like you can potentially meet so many people. I'm not going to do that much research beforehand. It's not worth my time. Even if you send me your Instagram handle, I'm going to think you're a douchebag and I'm probably not going to date you. But like, it's not until after I've like seen this person maybe a couple of times that I'm going to be like, okay, all right, now what are you not telling me?
Yeah, that is funny. I had a situation recently where a person that I was talking to had, I don't want to say it was like things that didn't align, but like their living situation wasn't what I would have expected with like their career situation. And I love your face right now. And so I was like, okay, just for my own peace of mind, I just want to confirm that they like work at this company that they said they work at. So to do that, so basically, and they don't have like any personal social media either, which is kind of interesting. But so I went and looked on LinkedIn, and sorry if anyone from the company is listening, I did use my company paid Sales Navigator account for this search. So my bad. Hopefully that doesn't get me fired. Also, if anyone can see Blue right now, he is sleeping / pouting behind me.
Per usual.
So I looked on LinkedIn because I'm like, okay, if you're a professional, you've been in, your career for many years, you're going to have a LinkedIn profile. No LinkedIn profile, which to me was a red flag because I was like, okay, that's a little suspicious.
I find that really weird.
It's really weird.
Like my stepdad has had no social media for the longest time. He eventually got on Facebook because I think he had FOMO. Now he's obsessed. But the only social media platform he had before that was LinkedIn.
Right.
Like, I feel like LinkedIn, if you're doing anything professionally, I've never met somebody without it. That's actually really surprising.
Yeah, it's interesting. So then I was like, okay, now I'm a little concerned. So I went to the Google and I did some Googling. And thankfully I knew the last name because he'd had like a tab open under it. So I did a little Googling and found some things that checked out and were like in alignment with the information he had given me. So I was like, okay, I feel better. It's kind of weird he doesn't have LinkedIn, but I'll just ask him about that at some point if it comes up.
It's kind of weird that he doesn't have much of an online footprint.
Yeah, but some people are just like that.
Yeah, but most people have at least something. Like, I don't know. That was actually one thing that we didn't even think, right? To ask for the poll. But sometimes I'm even more concerned if I don't find anything when I'm creeping, because then I'm like, okay, now I feel like you have something to hide, but maybe I'm just super, super crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends. Like my dad doesn't have any social media profiles. Like he doesn't have a LinkedIn, and my dad's not that old. My dad's like, how old is my dad? I don't know. He's like early 50s. Like he wasn't born before all of these things existed. He wasn't actually, I think he was born before the internet, but anyways. So to me, I'm just like, some people just, I don't know, just don't have it. And this person is definitely not as old as my dad, but
well, exactly. That's the thing. Like, I'm not concerned that my dad doesn't have it. I'm concerned when like my peer doesn't have it. And then it's interesting. A lot of times, like they give you a story and like, oh yeah, like I deleted all my social media accounts because I work for the army or like some kind of government agency and I don't want them to find me or whatever bullshit. Or you find out they're a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, that's always fun.
Yeah, I've
know.
dated a couple of those.
You've made it to dating a couple of them.
Yeah.
I
Cringe.
can't say I'm shocked. But yeah, so
I
that's
don't
like
discriminate.
that's like the most creeping I've done. I know we asked people which platform, and I think everyone said Instagram.
It was
right?
unanimous. Yeah.
That's so interesting to me because I feel like, I mean, one, I feel like it can be hard to find people on Instagram, especially if you're not connected to them with, people just using different usernames and things like that. And then people having private accounts, which I did up until basically this podcast, until you convinced me otherwise. I don't know. I feel like the first place I would start would be Google, but
well, I mean, I'm thinking like I usually start on Google too, but like if they have, especially if they have a public account, Instagram, if that's what you're using, is going to be the first result. So I could see people also saying like, oh yeah, I Googled them, but like in their mind, they're not saying that's a platform. They're looking at the first platform that pops up being Instagram and the one that they use. Yeah. I suppose we didn't say like, which search engine do you use?
That's fair. That's fair.
Do you use the Yellow Pages? Do you use White Pages?
Do you pay for a tool? Do you have a stalking
Google?
tool?
Ask Jeeves?
So what are some of the other, let's think through this since people didn't really answer some of the other things that they can use. I know I mentioned Sales Navigator. So for people who aren't familiar, on LinkedIn, there's kind of if you just have a regular LinkedIn account and profile, there's a whole other like interface for people who are in sales to find people based on their name, the company they work at,
prospecting.
For prospecting. And so, yeah, that's an interesting one because if you want to confirm like whether or not they're like, oh, if someone's like, oh yeah, I work at Google, right? You could go in to Sales Navigator if you have the account or if you know someone that does and like type in their name and look at their profile or look at like people that work at Google and see if they actually like have the role that they say they do. I actually did this for one of our friends because the guy she was seeing wouldn't tell her where he worked.
That's like weird.
He wouldn't tell her what his job was.
He was unemployed, right?
No, he had a job. I found him. But yeah, it was just really bizarre. I actually found him because this was like the most in-depth stalking I've ever done, and it wasn't even for myself. I tried to do a reverse image search. So if you have like a really clear photo of someone's face, you can actually like upload that photo into Google and search results that match the face. It's tricky unless it's like really clear. But I know I should try it with like a couple of our photos and see if it brings up the swipe site. But I couldn't find him that way. And then I noticed in one of his photos, he had like I don't know if it was I think it was UT or something. And so I used that as like the school and then his first name and then the location. And I fucking found him.
Oh my God.
Well, and it turned out he was a sales manager for like a supplies company or something. And I was like, number one, why would you say that that's a complicated job to explain? That's a very simple job to explain.
Well, I mean, just why hide it? Like, why hide that? I don't get it. Like, do you think I'm going to go, whatever. That's so bizarre. It's really funny that you did that though. I feel like it's a lot more fun to stalk other people's prospects than your own.
Oh, for sure.
Obviously, because like I feel like I'm way too emotionally invested. I'm like, Oh my God, but it's so much more fun when it's not your heart on the line.
Yeah, well, when it feels like it's a research project and
Yeah.
not like you're not trying to confirm suspicions or, deepen them. What would you say? So you mentioned again that you don't usually do any like creeping until you're maybe like later in the process.
When they're further down the pipeline.
When they're further down the funnel, when there's intent and
Yeah.
consideration. Jesus.
Oh God,
And like
it really has been a work day, huh?
I need a day off. It's been like 1 week back in.
I know, same.
What so what is your like kind of what are your other reasons for not searching besides just like not wanting to go down those rabbit holes?
Um, well, not to go back to sales, but so one of the things, for those of y'all who don't know, I worked at GoDaddy, formerly Main Street Hub, which was a really big social media startup in town, up until they laid everybody off. Anyways, the way that sales process worked was it was a very short sales cycle, and I would source my own leads a lot of the time, but I had certain criteria that I looked for that was very like high level, based on if I thought they could afford the product and if I thought I could talk to them. Um, but I purposely like would go into each call and I wouldn't do a ton of research, whereas a lot of my coworkers would, before a demo or before like even the initial call, would get kind of lost in the weeds of like looking at all the things wrong with their social media platforms and this, that, and the other. Me, I looked for like three major things. That was it. So to make a long story short, I think that's part of the reason why I have this mindset, because it's definitely something that is more me now versus me when I first started like dating around. Um, and it's not even that I go on so many dates, like versus sales. I was making so many calls that I didn't have time. It's really just a matter of like how much time do I want to invest in somebody before I actually meet them.
Yeah.
Again, like really long-winded way to say like my time's valuable. And if I meet you and you're cool, and then I want to learn more about you, not just what you're going to tell me, but yeah, I'm going to creep on your pages, because if you've got pages, that's like whatever you're putting out there for the world. So it's kind of free reign, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely checked out like Instagram accounts and things like that after like a few, like you said, a few dates in, or when I'm like, oh, I'm actually like curious to see what this person is like, what their online presence looks like. What are they projecting to the world, right?
Right. Who do
Or
they
like,
want you to think they are? I think is kind of, I always think it's interesting knowing the person in real life and knowing what they put out on social media, because they're usually not totally the same.
oh, for sure. And I mean, there are so many people where based on their social media, I expect them to be like assholes and they actually end up being really cool.
Yeah.
um, so we put another question out. So for the people who do check their dates social media out, we asked them how intense
Yes.
how intensely they do. Where did we end up there?
And so we did the sliding scale thing. One being like super light stalking, just kind of poke around, see if they have accounts. Versus 10, like so bad that you know their like social security number by the end of it. Obviously, that's dramatic. Please don't find people's social security numbers. But I was actually a little surprised by this. I thought it was going to be a little bit more closer to like the lighter side, like midway but lighter, and it was actually just over between the halfway point and heavy or intense, if you will. Did that make sense? You look
Yeah.
confused.
Yep. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that is definitely interesting because it also makes me wonder if people are doing that. I mean, are they just like going into week 432 on like Instagram pages? Or are they doing the like, oh, I'm going to look at the accounts that are tagged? Like, I feel like there's only so much that you can see, right?
I mean, if the person has a public profile, there's a lot you can see. But I mean, I wonder if this is kind of the same problem that some of my coworkers used to see at GoDaddy, where they would just get so into like finding, just looking at everything that they could, because there's obviously so much online for a lot of these people, that they just get in the weeds and in a way like kind of overwhelm themselves. Because I feel like that's, especially when I was younger and like my early 20s, that's what I was doing.
Yeah. Well, and then again, it's like,
you know what I mean?
There are also memes about it, which I love, where it's like, oh, when you go on a date and they talk about their niece and you're like, oh yeah, she looks so cute in that photo at Disney last year, which I'm sure happens. Like,
oh yeah,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, and
that's
I
really
just get a little anxious about that. Like, I feel like my anxiety is part of the reason I don't go further in, because I'm like, I would hate to be that person that like drops the bomb and then I'm like, oh, I was actually like 43 weeks into your tagged photos, your friends' photos. It's not even on your profile.
Yeah. How's John doing? Your friend John seemed to have like a rough week last week. Is he okay? Will he be joining
his story. He was really upset about everything, huh?
Will he be joining us tonight? This other one. So have you ever found something that you didn't expect? And then one of the responses we have here is job.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that because the same person also answered no. I'm not gonna lie, I was really hoping with that question that somebody would give us like some tea, and maybe like some kind of story similar to some of the memes that we've seen, because I know they're out there. But I don't know, have you ever found something you didn't want to find or didn't expect?
No, only because I think the number of times I've looked someone up before a date is probably 2, 3 even. Like, what
about after, like, you've been at the point where you in your funnel where you decide to start stalking? What if like you're a few dates in or whatever, you're invested, you start creeping, finding something you didn't expect?
So I don't feel like I ever really stalk, to be honest, or like start digging. But I did have a situation where I'd been seeing someone for, I think it had been at least a few months, and they popped up in a tagged photo with this girl who's like name I hadn't heard or recognized. And it was just like a weird situation. And I don't think I brought it up. I think I was just like, I'll let this fester. I was young at the time.
Well, that's my favorite move.
But then someone else at like a party mentioned the person, and I was like, who? And they're like, oh, that's so-and-so's ex-girlfriend. And I was like, huh? And they're like, yeah, you didn't know that they work together? And I was like, huh?
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So basically, I think we were at least like months into seeing each other, if not, actually, it was probably longer at that point. It was probably much longer than that. But, and yeah, they just didn't want to bring up the fact that they literally worked with their ex-girlfriend. And I was like, cool. So now we're going to talk about this.
That's a tough conversation to have.
It is, but we're not talking about like worked at the same company. We're talking about the service industry, and we're working together on the same shifts.
Oh.
Yeah. Which I mean, feel like
still a hard conversation to have with your new like person of interest.
Yeah.
But well,
I think that's the most that I've seen just kind of like pop up though. What about you? Any digging once you've been further into it?
Nothing really comes to mind. I've definitely like people that I've kind of thought were a little sketchy. I've looked up to see if they have like court records. I have
Hmm.
no shame in that. My mom white paged a guy for me. This was back when I was in high school, and it was a guy that I had started talking to via Facebook before there were even dating apps.
Ah,
And she was like, what's my 16-year-old doing? Like, who is this guy she's talking to? Like, she's like, Marie. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, I know that he could be, a serial killer, a child molester, like all these horrible things. However, I have stalked his Facebook page because we're connected through this social media platform. And I stalked him intensely. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's a real human being and he's not a fucking pedophile. Needless to say, that was not good enough for her. She took all of his information, white paged him, and was still not satisfied with her results that he was who he said he was.
did you ever end up meeting him?
Oh yeah, no, we're still like friends. We met and we dated for a couple of years. Yeah, it's funny. It was the app on Facebook called Flirtable, which I don't think it even exists anymore. But
Who knows? Who
yeah, it
knows?
was weird.
Remember when
He did,
Facebook?
however.
Huh?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say he did, however. One thing he did fake to get my attention was he faked an Irish accent.
Like when you met?
No, when we would talk on the phone because we lived about 2.5 hours apart.
Okay.
So we actually didn't meet until we'd been talking for like 6 years.
Oh,
And that's not talking as we know it today, where you're like dating.
yeah.
It was like, we knew each other in text and shit. But yeah, it took us like 6 years to meet. But for the first like couple of months, he would only talk to me on the phone with an Irish accent. I'm not sure like what initially possessed him to do that. We were young, but I was all about it.
I don't even know how to process this information right now. So at what point did you find out that he didn't actually have an Irish accent?
I think there was a point where I was just asking him questions about like something. And he like he's like, yeah, I'm gonna just come clean here. Like, I know I told like, and he's like, he never claimed to be from Ireland, like first generation. He's technically what is it when your grandparent is the one that moves over here and then your dad's born here? Because that's what he is.
Or, uh,
I think it's
third
third,
generation.
second or third. But yeah, he's like, but yeah, my grandpa basically raised me, so I'm able to kind of mimic the accent really well. And we were both theater kids, so I was like, whatever, it's cool.
That actually explains a lot.
Yeah.
Wait, is he the one that you made the meme out of that you like posted that picture of?
No, that was like my first real, or no, that was my second boyfriend in middle school. This
Oh,
was
okay.
actually after that.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Well, what else do we have from the poll here in terms of what people look for?
I think that's almost more important than anything else.
I think so.
What do
too.
you look for?
I mean, again, I feel like this isn't super relevant to me since I don't stalk, but if I were, I mean, I would look for like confirmation of things. Like the only reason I would look is if I had a reason to believe that like something wasn't true. So I would look to confirm that. Yeah, I guess, or like, see, I wouldn't even look on like Instagram to see if we had like common interests or anything, because I would learn that by talking to them, right? Or I would know enough of that from like their profile.
You see it on a dating app.
Yeah. But I guess one thing would be like looking to see if they're currently in a relationship.
Yeah.
That I feel like that is something It was a little bit different because it wasn't someone that I was like going on a date with or anything, but I've had a couple situations where I've been like, oh, wait, that's your wife. Why are you DMing me on Instagram? Like, why? What is going on here?
Yeah.
So
I
that's
feel
definitely like something I would look at or look for, would see like, are they in a relationship?
well, and along those lines too, I like to see when their relationship ended. So like if they've posted photos with a girl and like was that a week ago or was that like 2 years ago that they were like, love you, babe, happy anniversary.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
That's yeah. It's I think I look for that more because sometimes it gives me a little bit of an idea of without asking like where they could be in the process of like dating because if they're like 3 weeks out of a relationship that they were in for like years, which a lot of guys that I've actually seen lately have been kind of upfront about that, but if they're not, then they've been out of a relationship for 3 weeks, they haven't said anything about it, they're probably just fucking, like they're not doing anything to be serious about dating. So we're probably not on the same page.
Yeah, that's definitely fair, especially if there isn't communication around it, because I feel like, of a couple of guys that I've talked to somewhat recently, they were really upfront about like, hey, I just got out of a 5-year relationship, or this is where I'm at, blah, blah, blah. So, there wasn't like a need to creep there because they were transparent about it. But I also feel like a lot of people aren't. And it goes both ways.
Well,
right?
I think it's a tough conversation to have, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, whether you're not looking for anything or maybe you don't want to go into it and think like have the other person automatically have this assumption that you are looking for more and you're really just trying to get to know them. So I kind of like, I understand it. I don't think you need to be super upfront about your ex from the get-go. But for me, it's just something to keep in mind if it's like something I find online. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. What did our followers say? It looks like, okay, so activities they're interested in. This is definitely one I could see. So I volunteer. Well, obviously, Marie, but I don't know. This
a lot of you have been asking.
A lot of you have been asking how I spend my time. So I volunteer at Austin Pets Alive, and there are like several Facebook groups for various reasons and different like parts of that. And it's funny. There's one guy there in particular who's total badass, like takes such good care of the animals. And I'm like we're like friends now on Facebook because we did like a project together. But he, from his personal, not just like in the groups, like reposts from Austin Pets Alive all the time. He like posts dogs he's walking. He posts that. So that is definitely an example of how if someone were to stalk him to try to date him, right, they would absolutely know how passionate he is about Austin Pets Alive dogs.
Wait, are we saying that's a bad thing?
No, I'm saying that's like an example. Like that's an example of a positive thing, right? That you could find. But I'm just saying that's like almost a more dramatic example of really seeing like, okay, this is what's important to them. This is what they're putting out into the world. This is somewhere they're obviously spending a lot of time. And maybe for some people they'd be like, oh, gross, like I hate animals. I would never get along with that person. Or
well, that same person though, like I bet if you were to see that same guy's Hinge profile, I bet he would have photos of him with animals. I bet one of the questions would say something along the lines of like, what are your hobbies? He'd say, I volunteer with the APA. So, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of some of the dating apps right now, though, is that we're making the whole social media stalking thing a little bit easier by like having the information right there on the dating app or wherever the platform is.
Well, and I mean, at least Hinge, right? Like you can connect your Instagram so people can like go directly to
Right.
it. So, but yeah, I think
Yeah,
the way
exactly.
that the more recent apps are designed, the idea is that you're showcasing those things that you would show on like social media or in groups or things. So that's interesting. What type of activities would you find that would cause you to actually cancel a date? Like what would be something you would find that would cause you to cancel?
I I can't really think of anything. I will say, like, if I see a guy with like a cigarette, I'm gonna think twice. I probably won't cancel, but it is a turnoff to me. Um, in terms of like canceling, I mean, I can't really think, like, to me, hobbies are hobbies. Like, as long as you're really passionate about whatever it is, like, you do you. Like, I have a lot of random hobbies. and, and I feel like when you get somebody talking about them, it kind of shows like this different side of them, like the same way that that guy you mentioned probably lights up when he talks about the dogs that he's walked that day, the same way you do, actually. Cuff, maybe you should date. um, but I think that says a lot, and a hobby that goes beyond just, oh, I'm going out tonight, like I'm with my friends out on 6th Street, like, because there's, I mean, yeah, that's a fun, like hanging out with your friends is definitely a hobby, but to me, like, that's not the only hobby that you could have. So if you're passionate about whatever it is, whether you like woodworking or, I'm trying to think of some really off the wall hobbies right now, and it's not. I'm like, I'm looking at my plants and I'm like, if you like gardening.
Yeah, if you like gardening, come to my house because I've killed all of my plants. Actually, I feel like someone would walk in and if they were like really passionate about gardening, they'd be like, "Oh no, this is a plant cemetery. I can't
this is
date this
over.
girl."
How does she keep the dog alive? She can't even keep the succulent alive.
It's true.
I
Cool.
think some of the other things in here, how often they post with other girls for like clout, I think is a big thing, and that kind of goes with people that are posting a lot of those like party photos too, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
I think it's kind of almost like a lifestyle thing. You kind of want to see if the person on their social presence matches your lifestyle and your vibe.
Yeah, I would agree with it, especially when it's like, I mean, it's the same as when people have those photos as their, like all of their profile photos are them with groups of
Mm-hmm.
like just like wicked hot girls and like super cute
Yeah.
outfits, like super made up. It's like, okay, if you're trying to put out there that like this is what you're striving for, like I'm chilling in leggings and a flannel on a Friday, so we're probably not gonna be a match. Like I am wearing mascara, but that's the extent of it. So probably not gonna be a fit if you're looking for someone who's in like 6-inch stilettos every time you go out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But I think I mean to be fair, it's like sometimes it's like, well, these are my friends and they're, so I'm posting
That's how
photos
they
with
are.
them. But I also think it's pretty easy to spot a difference between like, oh, these are my friends and I'm out with them. And every single picture is like me with a different hot
Like
girl.
a, yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like anybody listening knows what we're talking about. Um, the other thing too, like looks, right? Kind of along that same line. I think it's really, especially hearing from guys, they get really nervous about a girl catfishing them. So I feel like sometimes it would make sense to me for somebody to go like find somebody's Instagram and be like, okay, you do look like these photos that you have on your Hinge profile.
So
Like,
I probably I,
uh-oh.
I probably shouldn't even say this because it's like embarrassing for me kind of, but I was talking to this guy from like probably Hinge or Tinder or whatever for I think we'd like been talking for a few days. And then yeah, he wanted my Instagram and I was like, sure, whatever. And I want to preface this by saying like I feel like I have recent and realistic photos on my profiles. I don't edit my photos. I don't do weird shit to them. But he followed me, or he didn't follow me. He followed me on Instagram and then he ghosted me.
Oh shit.
And I was like, all right, well, that feels a little shitty. Like, all right, I guess my Instagram presence doesn't meet your requirements. I don't know. It was fucking weird. But I was like, all right, I don't think I'm presenting myself inaccurately. Like, what the fuck, dude?
I mean, that's like a whole nother level of like, I mentioned that in the beginning. When a guy asks for your Instagram handle, I feel like he's a douchebag. And I feel like that guy was probably a douchebag. Point blank.
Yeah, he was probably looking for those photos, like the clout photos. And he's like, oh, she doesn't even pose with her guy friends and her hot girlfriends. What is she doing?
Yeah. How dare she not have hot female friends?
How
all over her Insta.
Yeah, I do think like for guys, I feel like looking at Insta to confirm is a real thing. I mean, I feel like every guy friend of ours that we've talked to has either been catfished to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Or just every date they've gone on, like girls are like drastically different, or they have, you know, again, they're like really filtering their photos and they're really doing that. And so, yeah, I see the value in that for sure. I think there's less of that on the guy side, partially because like, I mean, half of them can't even take a good photo, let alone edit it. No offense, guys.
Unless they're photographers or like actors or something, or they're wannabe social media influencers.
I'm suspicious of anyone who's like, who all of their photos look professional. I'm like,
yeah,
it's a little weird. What are you doing?
That's a whole different episode, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think we have that.
Well, and right on those notes too, like tagged photos I remember like even back in the early Facebook days, if I wanted to creep on somebody, the first thing that I would do would be to go to their tagged photos, because most of the time those are like the shittiest photos of them on the internet because they're not the ones in control of them.
Oh, on Facebook? Of course.
Facebook, like, Instagram, wherever. Like they are the worst photos of you. They're the random candid from high school of you're like at a dance, like bad.
I feel like for a while my friends really loved posting photos of me drunk. And so it would be like, nice. Oh, everybody looks cute and Michelle's just like sloppy faced drunk in this photo, or looks it at least, even if she's not. So yeah, the tagged photos are definitely where to go there. The other thing that's interesting about tagged photos is on Instagram in particular, I think you see more of this, but like if they don't have any photos with a girl or potential girl on their profile, but you tagged photos, I've also seen this occur where there's like a girl, and again, this is like usually not people I'm like dating, but just random people on Insta, where the girl has tagged them in photos in like several and like indicates that they're in a relationship. And if you look at the guy's profile, there's nothing.
Yep.
But yeah.
And then you're left sitting there like, huh, all right. So you're sliding into a lot of girls' DMs, aren't you?
Right.
That's my first thought.
You're obviously using this for a purpose. I mean, there are other reasons. Also, like I know we have we have like a friend that has more of like an influencer account, and for like business reasons, she keeps it kind of just, you know, her own photos. And so that makes sense because that's like a business perspective. So there are some exceptions there too. But yeah, I think that's interesting. This other response was interesting to me. This is the last one for this question. Their family. So do you think that's referring to like if they have kids or not? Or do you think that's referring to, I mean, I guess why would you care?
No, I don't think so. I think it's more referring to like seeing seeing the way the person interacts with their family. Like, are they close? Like, do they have any photos on here for like Mother's Day, Father's Day? Like, and I think that's kind of smart because family is a really good indication of like the person's headspace and what they might be looking for in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know that like social media posts are as, or like online posts are necessarily as big of an indicator of that, just because like I'm super close to my dad and I have maybe like 5 pictures with him over the last 5, or 6 or 7 years. So that's where I
Sure,
think,
but you've got your mom on your feed, you've got your stepdad, you've got your brother.
yeah, that's true.
Um, and I mean, somebody might not necessarily know like you have a dad and a stepdad.
Yeah.
So to them, just seeing like family says a lot more than like somebody that literally just has like no photos of any family members at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think for me that one depends a little bit. But I could see how you would like look for that and if you see that it's a positive. I just personally I don't think that like a lack of photos with family is a negative, if that makes sense. Or like
Yeah, no,
indicates that they're not close.
I agree. I mean, I think maybe no family photos is like more of a neutral.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least for me, but like to see photos like, oh, you've got a picture of like you and your mom for Mother's Day or something, like that's kind of heartwarming for me. That shows me like if it's somebody that I really want to get involved with, it's kind of an indication of like what a future could be like if you know this person.
Yeah.
On the other end of
Yeah.
the spectrum, though, if it looks like they're maybe a little too close with their family, um,
Like if every other photo is them and their mom.
well, or they're like maybe like kissing on the lips or anything that's like taboo in American society with that. I saw a meme recently, sorry, or no, it was on You Up because we haven't
I was
mentioned
gonna
Jared
say,
Freed yet today.
yeah, yeah, I heard that one too. I've never come across that. I think that's a little more rare, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen pictures where I feel like you look at them and they're like maybe a little too close. Not to mention, one of my friends turned me onto this stupid Instagram account called Siblings Are Dating, and it
Uh,
literally just fucks with my head because the people look alike, and then they're like they've got their arms around each other, touching their legs, and then it's like siblings, and I'm like, oh, that's fucking weird.
my ex and I used to get asked all the time if we were brother and sister. And there's like a photo from one Christmas of him, his sister, and I. And we literally like we look like triplets. Like we look like we could be not triplets, but you got what I'm saying. Like we look
That is
for sure like we're a family.
That is my nightmare and exactly the reason why I never date gingers.
Yeah. I mean, I've changed up my type. So I don't think I don't think that's a
Let's hope.
problem. I don't think that's a problem anymore, at least at this current stage in my life. But so I don't think that people meant family as in kids, but I feel like in my experience, I've seen, well, I mean, we talked about the surprise babies, right? The two people, the surprise babies, people tuning in are going to be like, what?
Well,
I had 2 people kind of sliding in my DMs or talking and then didn't know they were in relationships and definitely did not know that they had babies on the way until I saw it on Instagram. And so
yikes.
I do feel like family from that perspective is like getting an idea of if they do have kid or kids,
A tiny human.
a tiny human or more, that's definitely like a way you could find that out. Because I would say most people post their kids. Some
It's
more,
at least in the tagged photo somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, those tagged photos. So yeah, I don't know. I guess what would you say is your number one tip or like tip for people who do want to do this research? Like, what is your advice to the people who do want to do some digging before a date?
I think just take everything with a grain of salt, because the person that you see online, and I say this like speaking from personal experience, my background in social media, I feel like I approach what I put on my story and on my feed a little bit differently than like people who are just using it for shits and giggles. Um, but even the people that are using it for shits and giggles, like that's not really 100% who they are. So I feel like with a grain of salt, everything, you know what I mean? And to just limit yourself. Like if you have to put a timer and like literally say on your phone, 5 minutes, I'm going to stalk Karen. Then when your timer goes off, you have to own that and you have to just stop. Because if you get too far into it, you're going to like want to kill yourself and it sucks. What about you? What's your advice?
Um, I would say look at some different, so for people who want to creep, I would say look at some different platforms. Obviously, we all probably use Instagram the most. But yeah, check out their LinkedIn, do a little poking around on Facebook, see if they're getting into comment wars with their family members.
We should mention LinkedIn though, unless you're using a business account or you're not logged in, it's going to tell them that you stalked them. So I wouldn't recommend LinkedIn unless you are either not logged in or have a special account.
It depends on their account though, because unless they have a premium account, it doesn't tell them who looked at their profile. It says someone from X company looked at your profile, doesn't it?
It tells you exactly who. If I don't pay for mine, it tells me exactly who. I saw when my ex was looking at my LinkedIn. And it was so random. I was like, we broke up years ago. Fuck off.
Well, don't stalk on LinkedIn unless you have a Recruiter or Navigator account, or you don't mind if they know that you looked at their LinkedIn, or use someone else's, right?
There you go.
Use your mom's LinkedIn or your dad's LinkedIn or your cousin's LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't know. I would say, like, to piggyback on what you said, don't, if you go too deep before you even met the person, you're really like kind of not giving the date a chance and probably shouldn't even go on the date anyways. If you're feeling the need to like really digest everything and not just be open-minded to getting to know them in person.
Well, it's also what like UP calls emotionally masturbating. You're like envisioning what it's like to be like this to be with this person without actually knowing them.
Yeah, definitely. And who they portray themselves as could be very, very different from who they actually are. So yeah, that's always an interesting one. Yeah, other than that, I don't know any like super secret platforms. So if you think of something after we hang up and there's a good one, then let us know and we'll share it so we can, because we want to support y'all, whether it's stalking or not stalking. We've got your back.
And if anybody has any tips, let us know. Something we didn't cover, or if you do have a story, I would love to hear the stories about the random shit that you troll.
Yes, absolutely. Or like if you created fake accounts to stalk people, maybe that's how you do it. Oh
my God, yes.
That's how you do it. But yeah,
I think that's it. That's the note.
That's it. Fake accounts. Speaking of accounts,
that's it.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Instagram, Twitter. We have a Facebook. We don't really use it, so please don't I guess you could message us there. We'll see it eventually, but please don't. Please don't.
But wherever you want to find us, it's Swipe and the City.
And we're everywhere. So on that note,
we are.
Cheers.
Cheers.